When I bought my suburban dream house, I thought peace and quiet would come with it. A cozy street, trimmed lawns, and friendly smiles, or so I thought. What I actually got was an HOA dictatorship led by a woman named Karen Henderson, the self-proclaimed queen of Maple Ridge. The first week, I received a courtesy notice. My crime? My mailbox was painted a slightly non-regulation shade of blue. Karen herself hand-delivered the letter, wearing a wide-brimmed sun hat and sunglasses like she was inspecting a crime scene. "Home aesthetics are the cornerstone of community harmony," she said. I smiled and nodded because I didn't want trouble. I repainted the mailbox the approved beige and moved on. But I quickly learned, compliance only encouraged her. Every week, a new letter appeared. Lawn length exceeds regulation. Garden gnome disrupts uniformity. Once, she wrote, trash bins visible for more than 10 minutes after pickup. 10 minutes. Neighbors whispered that Karen had a telescope aimed at the cul-de-sac. I laughed, until I saw her SUV parked near my yard every morning. I told myself, let it go. But as every petty warning piled up, so did my irritation. I was starting to realize this wasn't a neighborhood. It was a stage, and Karen loved the spotlight. I didn't know it yet, but soon her obsession with community order would turn my driveway into a battleground. It all started with a gnome, a cheerful little ceramic fellow holding a welcome sign. My daughter gifted it to me for Father's Day, so naturally, I placed it by the mailbox. Within 24 hours, a white envelope appeared taped to my door. Violation notice number 7. Unauthorized lawn ornament. Must be removed within 48 hours. Karen signed it with her signature loopy cursive, as if she were issuing royal decrees. I chuckled, thinking it was a joke. I mean, who gets offended by a gnome? Apparently Karen did. When I ignored her friendly reminder, she showed up at my doorstep in person, clipboard in hand, with 2 board members flanking her like bodyguards. Karen. Mr. Collins, this ornament disrupts neighborhood uniformity. Me. It's a gnome, not a disco ball. Karen. You're welcome to appeal at the next HOA meeting. Fine, I thought. I'll play their game. I attended that meeting, where Karen introduced an emergency gnome regulation proposal. I swear half the attendees were stifling laughter. But Karen pushed it through by citing community integrity. The absurdity became my new entertainment. Neighbors began whispering, "Careful, or she'll come for your wind chimes next." Spoiler, she did. That night, my daughter asked why I looked annoyed. I told her the truth. Her gift was now banned by the local government of Maple Ridge. She laughed. I didn't. The gnome stayed. And that tiny act of defiance would be the first domino in Karen's eventual downfall. By autumn, my mailbox looked like a bureaucratic art project, filled with pastel envelopes stamped, "Notice." The HOA had more paperwork on me than a mortgage broker. One week, Karen cited me for having non-uniform mulch. Another, for improper driveway edging. I started keeping a binder, yes, an HOA violation binder. My wife laughed, but it was either that or lose my mind. Each letter went into a sleeve organized by date. I began to notice patterns. All violations were signed by Karen, not the board. Then one morning, I caught her taking pictures of my car from the sidewalk. Me. Everything okay, Karen? Karen. Just ensuring your vehicle isn't encroaching on community property lines. Community property lines. For a sedan parked in my own driveway. That night I checked the bylaws. Nowhere did it mention cars in driveways. What it did mention, however, was HOA officers must disclose personal conflicts of interest. And guess who owned a landscaping business contracted by, you guessed it, the HOA? Karen. I highlighted the clause and smiled. This wasn't just pettiness anymore. This was personal. I started documenting everything, timestamps, photos, recordings. Each warning she sent became another piece of evidence. And when she finally crossed the line, I'd be ready to push back. I just didn't know that line would soon be made of actual boulders. One Thursday morning, I woke up to a rumbling sound. I thought it was a garbage truck, until I looked outside. A landscaping crew, Karen's company, was unloading giant boulders across my driveway. Big ones, like something from a medieval castle wall. I ran out in disbelief. "What the hell are you doing?" The foreman shrugged. "HOA order. Driveway expansion not approved." Driveway expansion? I hadn't expanded anything. An hour later, Karen showed up, sipping iced coffee like she was supervising a movie set. Me. Karen, you can't block my driveway. Karen. You conducted unauthorized concrete work. Me. That was resurfacing. I even emailed the board. Karen. You didn't use an approved vendor. I laughed, partly out of rage. Your company is the only approved vendor, isn't it? She smiled. That's correct. I took pictures, lots of them. My cars were trapped, and my weekend plans were ruined. Karen looked thrilled. I called the city inspector, who showed up and confirmed, Sir, this is private property. They have no right to obstruct it. Karen looked nervous for the first time. I told her, You've officially crossed into harassment. Her answer? Take it up with the board. So I did. But first I sent a polite email, CC to the HOA attorney, city zoning officer, and the local news tip line. It was time to turn her favorite tool, paperwork, against her. If Karen loved paperwork, she was about to drown in it. I started sending formal complaint notices every day, dated, signed, and CC'd to half the county. Each message detailed her violations: unauthorized obstruction of property, conflict of interest, and abuse of HOA authority. I even attached photos of her company's logo on the Boulders. Within days, I got a reply from a board member named Greg, who whispered over the phone, You didn't hear it from me, but we've had multiple complaints about her lately. Interesting. Meanwhile, the Boulders stayed. My driveway was a rock garden, my patience a memory. I parked my car 2 blocks away and walked home every night, feeling like a trespasser on my own property. The neighbors were divided. Half thought Karen was crazy, half were too scared to speak up. Then one morning I got an envelope not from the HOA, but from the city. Cease and desist notice. Unauthorized obstruction of residential property access. Immediate removal required. Karen ignored it. So I filed a restraining order request and contacted a local property lawyer. The moment the attorney saw my documentation, he grinned. You've got her cornered. And for the first time since moving here, I felt like maybe, just maybe, the HOA queen was about to lose her crown. The next HOA meeting was packed. Every folding chair taken, every whisper buzzing. Karen sat at the head table, gavel in hand like Judge Judy on a caffeine high. When my name came up on the agenda, she sighed dramatically. Mr. Collins, regarding your alleged complaints. I interrupted, holding up a folder. Documented complaints. I handed out copies of photos, emails, and bylaws violations. People leaned forward, murmuring as I pointed out the section stating no officer may financially benefit from HOA vendor contracts. Greg, the board member who'd called me, looked like he'd been waiting for this. Karen, is it true Maple Ridge Landscaping is registered under your name? She turned red. That's irrelevant. It's illegal, I said. And those boulders are on private property. The room went silent. Someone whispered. She blocked his driveway? Karen slammed the gavel. Order. But it was too late. Neighbors started questioning everything. The endless fines, the strange charges, the mandatory repainting fees. When the meeting adjourned, half the attendees surrounded me, offering to sign statements. Karen stormed out, muttering something about ungrateful residents. As I packed up my binder, Greg whispered, If you're serious, we'll back you. Oh, I was serious. Because next week, I'd be taking the Queen of Maple Ridge to court. Filing a lawsuit wasn't cheap, but watching Karen's smug face drop was priceless. My lawyer filed for injunctive relief, demanding immediate removal of the boulders and compensation for interference with property access. When she got served, she actually came to my house again. Karen. You think you can intimidate me with lawyers? Me, no, just the law. She stomped away, muttering legal nonsense she clearly Googled that morning. Meanwhile, the neighborhood started waking up. People shared their own Karen horror stories. One woman said she'd been fined for planting tulips. Another got a violation for decorative pumpkins. It became a movement. Hashtag Free Maple Ridge started trending locally after someone posted my story online. Karen tried damage control with an HOA email blast. Certain individuals are spreading misinformation regarding board actions. Please disregard rumors. Yeah, sure. 2 days before the court hearing, Karen finally called a voluntary cleanup, but the crew only moved one boulder, the smallest one. My lawyer grinned. Perfect. Noncompliance strengthens your case. When court day arrived, Karen strutted in like she owned the courthouse. But judges, unlike HOA boards, don't take kindly to power trips. Especially not ones built on boulders. Court felt surreal. Me versus Karen, queen of the HOA. She showed up in pearls and a floral blazer, holding a binder of her own evidence, which was basically my violation letters. The judge, a calm woman with zero patience for nonsense, asked, "Mrs. Henderson, did you authorize the obstruction of Mr. Collins' driveway?" Karen. "It was necessary to enforce HOA guidelines." Judge. "Show me where in the bylaws it allows physical obstruction of access." Karen flipped pages, stammering. The judge turned to me. "Mr. Collins?" I handed over my binder, timestamps, photos, city letters, the vendor contract proving her company's involvement. The judge's expression hardened. "Mrs. Henderson, this appears to be a personal conflict of interest." Karen. "That's outrageous." Judge. "What's outrageous is thinking you can play city engineer because you don't like someone's resurfacing job." The courtroom chuckled. Verdict. HOA must remove all obstructions immediately, reimburse damages, and conduct an internal audit of board contracts. Karen looked like she'd swallowed a lemon. The judge added, "Every stone, Mrs. Henderson. Every single one." And that line, oh, that beautiful line, would become my neighborhood's favorite quote for months to come. The next morning, a crew arrived under court order to remove the boulders. The same workers who dumped them looked miserable as they rolled, lifted, and dragged each rock off my property. I watched from my porch with a mug of coffee, savoring every grunt. Karen stood across the street, arms crossed, glaring like she was trying to melt me with sheer willpower. Me. "Make sure they get every stone, Karen." Neighbor from 2 doors down. Judge's orders. It felt like a parade. Neighbors actually clapped as the final boulder was loaded onto a truck. Someone even played "We Will Rock You" on a Bluetooth speaker. I noticed Karen's landscaping truck leaving with the stones. The irony was poetic. She'd blocked me with her business, and now her business was cleaning up her mess. Later that afternoon, I got a short, bitter email. As required by court mandate, the HOA has completed driveway restoration. This matter is now closed. Karen Henderson. I replied simply, "Appreciated. Please ensure all future correspondence follows proper bylaws." Translation. Don't mess with me again. That night, the neighbors gathered in my yard for celebratory barbecue. For the first time since moving here, I actually felt at home. The queen had stumbled, but she wasn't dethroned yet. Rumors were swirling. There was going to be an emergency election meeting. And guess who was about to run against her? Started as a joke. Greg said, "You should run for HOA president." Everyone laughed. Until they realized I was seriously considering it. Karen had ruled Maple Ridge for 6 years unopposed. She won by default every time because no one wanted the hassle. But after the Boulder fiasco, people wanted change. They wanted fairness. They wanted me. I made flyers. Collins for common sense. And handed them out door to door. I didn't promise perfection. I promised peace. Karen, meanwhile, went full politician. She started her own campaign. Keep Maple Ridge beautiful. Her flyers included photos of manicured lawns and suspiciously stock image families. She even mailed out HOA pride stickers like we were running a political race. At the next board meeting, she confronted me. "Karen, you're undermining community unity." Me. "I'm just giving people a choice, democracy, remember?" The room chuckled. She hated that. The election was scheduled for 2 weeks later. In that time, I hosted coffee meetups, helped fix an elderly neighbor's mailbox, and even mowed a few lawns. People started seeing me not as the troublemaker, but the neighbor who actually cared. Meanwhile, Karen doubled down on fear tactics, warning everyone that lax enforcement would lead to chaos. By the final week, the neighborhood was divided. Half with her glossy flyers, half with my handwritten ones. But when voting day came, Karen would learn something she'd never faced before. Accountability. Election day was pure suburban theater. The community center was packed, retirees, young couples, parents balancing toddlers on their hips, everyone whispering like it was national politics. Karen sat at the front table, hair perfectly sprayed, her pearls practically glowing under the fluorescent lights. I sat beside her, calm and smiling, clutching my speech notes. Greg called the meeting to order. 2 candidates for HOA president, Karen Henderson and David Collins. Karen went first. Her speech was a masterclass in denial. Under my leadership, Maple Ridge has maintained beauty, safety, and property value. Certain residents may misunderstand the importance of structure. Cue the eye rolls. Then it was my turn. I stood up and said, "Structure's fine, but when rules become weapons, we lose what makes this a neighborhood. We become prisoners in beige boxes." Someone clapped. Then another. I held up my binder. These are the letters sent to residents, not just me. Lawn color, gnomes, wind chimes. Is this really harmony? By the time I finished, the room was buzzing. Greg collected the votes. When he read the results, Karen's face froze. By a vote of 47-12, David Collins is the new HOA president. The room erupted. Karen didn't clap. She stood, muttered something about ungrateful amateurs, and stormed out. For the first time ever, Maple Ridge had a new leader, and my first executive order was going to be glorious. My first day as HOA president, I called an emergency board meeting. Everyone showed up, curious, hopeful, or just there for the drama. "Today," I said, "we're talking about 3 things: transparency, fairness, and Karen's audit." A hush fell. Greg grinned. Turns out, Karen's beautification projects had been funneling HOA money into her own company for years. Overpriced lawn services, mandatory repainting, and emergency tree trimming, all signed by her, billed to us. I hired an independent auditor. The findings were ugly. Thousands of dollars in misused funds. We presented the report publicly. Karen tried to deny everything, until receipts surfaced with her signature. Karen. This is character assassination. Me no Karen. It's accountability. The board voted unanimously to remove her from all committees and ban her from HOA contracts indefinitely. To top it off, the city fined her business for fraudulent documentation. Karma finally clocked in. Then came the fun part, revising the bylaws. I added clauses protecting residents from arbitrary fines, excessive surveillance, and vendor monopolies. We even created a Community Freedom Day, where people could decorate however they wanted. Lawn gnomes, flags, fairy lights. No restrictions. That weekend, every yard looked alive again. And in the middle of it all, my daughter replaced the original gnome. Freshly painted, holding a new sign. "Welcome to the free zone." If I thought Karen would fade quietly, I was wrong. She began her own shadow HOA, sending handwritten citizen warnings to residents. One note read, "Your inflatable flamingo disrupts visual harmony. Kindly remove within 24 hours. People laughed and posted them online. Soon, #Karen Notes trended locally. She called the police once, claiming someone stole her right to oversee neighborhood decor. The officer who arrived recognized me from court. He looked at her letter and sighed. "Officer. Ma'am, this isn't a crime. It's glittery paper," she screamed. "He's turning my neighborhood into a circus." Me, correction, our neighborhood. And we love the circus. Eventually, the board issued a restraining order preventing her from harassing residents under HOA pretenses. Her downfall became community legend. Kids dressed up as HOA Karen for Halloween. Someone even placed a mini boulder in front of her old mailbox with a plaque that read, "In memory of petty rule enforcement." Even then I felt a little bad for her. Power had eaten her alive. But mostly I felt relief. For the first time since moving to Maple Ridge, people smiled at each other again. No fear, no hidden cameras, no pastel envelopes taped to doors. Just neighbors being neighbors. And honestly, that felt like real justice. Months passed, and Maple Ridge looked completely different. Not in color or style, but in spirit. Kids played in driveways, people chatted by mailboxes, and weekend potlucks became a thing. We weren't just following rules anymore, we were building community. I launched a digital suggestion box where anyone could propose ideas. The first submission read, "Ban power tripping presidents." Approved unanimously. We planted community gardens, installed a free library box, and even hosted a Decorate Your Driveway contest because, irony, Karen still lived on the far end of the neighborhood, peeking from her blinds occasionally. But she never spoke at meetings again. I once saw her in the grocery store. She looked smaller. She nodded, muttered, "Nice work with the flowers," and walked away. It wasn't victory that I felt, it was closure. I'd learned that standing up for yourself doesn't always mean fighting loud. Sometimes it means collecting receipts, staying calm, and letting the system trip over its own stones. The HOA didn't just change bylaws, it changed how people saw each other. Now, when someone gets a letter, it's usually handwritten, friendly, and starts with, "Hey neighbor, need a hand?" And every time I walk past my driveway, smooth and clear, I smile, remembering the boulders that once stood there. They thought they were walls. Turns out they were stepping stones. I never planned to go viral. One night, my daughter convinced me to share the story online. "Just post it on Reddit, Dad. People love HOA drama." So I did. Title: HOA blocked my driveway with boulders. A judge made them remove everyone. I woke up the next morning to chaos. Over 1 million views, thousands of comments. People were cheering, sharing their own HOA horror tales, and quoting the judge's line, "Every stone, Mrs. Henderson. Every single one." Local news picked it up. A reporter came by for an interview. They filmed the driveway, the gnome, even the community garden. Karen must have seen it because she sent one final email. "You've humiliated me publicly. I hope you're proud." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. 2 weeks later, I got a letter. Not from her, but from the mayor's office. The city wanted to feature Maple Ridge in a neighborhood renewal segment. Imagine that. The once infamous HOA street, now a model for cooperation. The irony was almost poetic. Karen moved away quietly that winter. Some say she joined another HOA in Florida. God help them. Meanwhile, I kept my Reddit post pinned as a reminder. Sometimes justice isn't loud. It's just patient and well documented. It's been 2 years since the Boulder War. My driveway is still perfectly smooth. Not a pebble in sight. But every time it rains, I swear I can hear the soft echo of those boulders being dragged away. The gnome still stands guard, though he's got company now. Flamingos, solar lights, and a birdbath shaped like a frog. Freedom in ceramic form. Sometimes new residents ask, "What's with the inside jokes? Why does everyone say every stone?" I tell them the story of petty power, quiet resistance, and the day a community chose sanity over control. Karen's name has become legend here. Not out of hatred, but as a cautionary tale about what happens when rules replace kindness. Maple Ridge isn't perfect, but it's human again. And that binder, my old HOA violation archive, sits on a shelf in my office. I keep it as a trophy, proof that calm persistence beats loud authority every time. When I look back, I don't think about the stress or the letters or even the court date. I think about the moment those boulders left my driveway. The collective cheer, the laughter, the sunlight hitting clean pavement. That's when I knew. Peace isn't the absence of conflict. It's the moment you stop letting other people build walls where your freedom should be. And if there's one thing I learned from it all, always document everything. Because sometimes the paper trail leads straight to victory.